Hey everybody, Mr. Wagner here. I'm going to teach you how to solder headers onto a circuit board. Now, right now I'm teaching a workshop where we're trying to get these LEDs to work and have a lot of fun. And most of the time I tell you to use what's known as a node MCU, which is a circuit board. Well, let's see here. And it comes already with these little headers things. See, these little things are called headers, okay? But sometimes you don't want to use this board. You would rather use a board like this. Now, this board is called a D1 Mini, and I happen to love these boards, but you always have to solder the little headers on. And if you've never soldered before, it can be very intimidating, although it's not a terribly difficult thing to do. So I'm going to try to show you how to do this and give you some confidence to try it yourself, because it's a lot of fun learning how to make circuits and soldering. It's very empowering. Okay, D1 Mini. I'm going to just, here, maybe I'll set that there. And then this is the board that we're going to use, so I'm going to set that there. Now, most circuit boards, they come in this little pack here like this, and this is an anti-static pack, and you just open it up, and you will see this board happens to be, actually I'm not sure what this board is. It may be a D1, it may be an ESP32 board. I have a habit of buying a lot of circuit boards and then they end up in my junk drawer, but that's my own thing. Anyway, this board looks like this and has these little things on it, and these are the headers. And what you usually do is you'll take the header and you'll push it through the little holes like that, and then we would solder all these little points, okay? But before we solder, we need to actually talk about soldering equipment. Now, in my workshop for making these LED strips, I have a link to an Amazon package, which is like this box full of all kinds of really cool soldering stuff. And I think it was like 13 bucks on Amazon. And I figure I'll share it with you. The first thing you're going to pull out of the box is this soldering iron. Now it looks like this. It has an on-off switch. And it looks like it's got a little heat dial here. I'm just going to leave that as is. And this is the handle. So anything from this area here all the way back, this is going to be cool to the touch. But anything that's metal, if you touch it while it's on, you're going to know it's going to be hot. I used to say if it smells like chicken, you're holding the wrong end. So don't touch the metal part, and then you'll be just fine. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and plug this in so that way it gets hot. I got plugged in, and I don't know if you can notice that, but there's a little light right here that shows that it's running. Okay, now next thing I want to show you that came with the kit is this little guy here. And it's basically just a little cheap metal stand, and it's got a sponge. Now this sponge I got wet, because what we do with the sponge is it helps clean the soldering iron tip. So I'm just going to set this like right there. Okay. Now, the other things it comes with this little goopy stuff here. I call this tip cleaner. Keeps that tip looking nice, and you can just dip the soldering iron in that real quick. I'll show you how that's done. And then we have a small little roll of solder. Now this solder, they call it 60-40 solder, and it's usually 60% tin, 40% lead, or close to that. And on the inside of this little strand is what's known as rosin or flux, and that helps clean the circuit, the solder joint as you're soldering, okay? You'll see smoke coming up. That's actually the rosin vaporizing. Now, this being lead, you're going to be fine health-wise. What I would suggest is, don't go beating your bologna sandwich while you're soldering, okay? Like, do your soldering, go wash your hands, and then you'll be fine, okay? All right, so I'm going to set that down. And let's see here. Okay, so the soldering iron may or may not be hot. I'm just going to put it in here, and you'll see it sort of melt its way there. Now notice how that tip looks, hopefully that looks a little bit clean. And what I'll do is I'm going to just add a little bit of solder to this tip so I can see if it's getting, yeah, so you can see it. Now, this pad that I have down here, this is just a silicone mat that I bought on Amazon a few years back. You don't really need it, but you know, it's helpful because if you get a splatter of solder or something like that, it'll protect your surface. Okay. So one other thing about this. Now, there's an old adage, never catch a falling knife. Similar with a soldering iron. If you lose hold of your soldering iron, it falls to the floor, just let it fall. Don't burn yourself. Don't try to catch it. Let it fall to the floor. Think about what you're doing and then pick it up by the handle, and that will be just fine. Okay, so what I'm going to do here first is I'm going to solder this first point. Now let me see if I can get a better angle on this camera. Can you see that really well? I can see that really well, so that's good. Okay, so here's my solder. This is the end of my solder thing. And I'm going to pick up my soldering iron. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that on that 3 volts, or that little pad, that little donut, they call those donuts, where that header is poking through. See, the header is poking through. And I'm going to put that on there. I'm going to just heat that up for a second and then add a little bit of solder. Let it flow and then let go. Okay? And you'll see it almost looks like a little donut, just like that. See how that looks like a donut? Okay. Now, I want you to notice that's not straight. Okay, that's not a 45-degree angle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this with my fingers. Let's see if I can get that up a little bit higher. Okay, I'm going to hold that with my fingers a little bit, and I'm going to just touch that solder joint just so I can melt it and get that flat. See how I did that? Okay, so once that's flat, now it's in pretty good shape. Okay, just like that. Now all I got to do is solder up the rest of them. Okay, so heat up the solder joint, add a little solder, let it go. Heat it up, add a little solder, let it go. Heat it up, add a little solder, let it go, etc. You'll get into a rhythm and they'll just solder right up. Okay, now a couple things. First off, every so often you want to clean your solder tip and you just basically just wipe it. Okay, you just wipe it on the sponge, you'll hear it. Okay, don't want to put that on there for a long time because that'll cool off the soldering iron. Okay, but a little bit is just fine. Okay, now the other thing is I want you to notice every so often you get this solder bridge, and in order to clean that up you can just take your soldering iron and go right in between, melt it, and then drag it back. See how that cleaned that up? Okay, now I'm just cleaning that up here. Maybe I'll move that like there so you can see what's going on. Okay, so now the other thing that happens sometimes when you're soldering, sometimes you get these donuts like this and they accidentally get a whole bunch of solder inside them. See, like that? See how I got solder there? Now, let me show you how to clean that up. Now, there was a fellow by the name of Mitch Altman. He invented the TV Be Gone. Look that one up. That one's fun. And he showed me this little soldering trick. If you get these little holes that are like this, what you can do is you can heat up that solder just like that, and then smack your hand down on the table. See how and the inertia of smacking your hand down on the table will knock that solder right out. So I'm going to do that again just to show you. Heat it up, give it a good smack. See, and now the hole is clear. That is a world famous trick. You show that to a old timer soldering guy and they'll be like, oh, I wish I would have known that forever, but they didn't. So anyway, that's soldering in a nutshell. take care of your equipment, and that soldering iron will last you a long time. Again, if you're using the Node MCU, they come pre-soldered. This is only if you're using a D1 Mini or an ESP32. And you have to solder those headers on. Anyway, hope that's helpful, and thank you very much. Hope to see you in the workshop. Bye.